Hello. Hello. How's everyone doing? Is everyone doing alright? Today we're reading. We're doing a little bit of reading. Yay! Hello, Assassin, Vizzy. How are you guys doing? How's everyone doing? Uh, I'm going to just gonna put snooze on the ad for a bit, for like 5 minutes. Um, Hello. So I got a good couple stories to read. A good couple ones. I hope you all like them. Uh, so what I have planned is going to be very interesting. Not only are we doing spooky stories, uh, I will also be reading a couple fables from Aesop Fables. I don't know if any of you know any of them. Uh, I actually really like Aesop's Fables. I read quite a few of the fables growing up, and you know, they're all tales that tell a good lesson or moral or something. But I also just honestly really love them. I'm also, and to me, it's one of the. It's just honestly just a great kind of thing to read. A lot of good stories in it. So let's kick it off with a spooky story. Uh, One that is near and dear to my heart. Uh, and you understand that saying heart is an indication of what it is. I will be reading The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Some people say it should just be Edgar A. Poe or Edgar Poe, because they say, Poe didn't really like his middle name of Allen, because it, you know, it was basically his father's name, and he doesn't have a good. With daddy. But to what I say is, who gives a fuck? Poe didn't care. He still went by the pen name Edgar Allan Poe. Sometimes he would put just Edgar A. Poe, but a lot of it was just Edgar Allan Poe. He didn't give a shit. Sure, he doesn't like his dad, but doesn't mean he can't use his own fucking name. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. So we will be, uh, I will be reading The Telltale Heart, one of his greatest poems, in my opinion. I actually love uh, this story from him very much. It is fantastic. I remember reading it for class years ago in middle school, actually. And the way we read it, though, was very different. We read it in a kind of weird style. It was from this, like, kind of like magazine about, like, it was like an English magazine, like it had like little stories in them, and it was for like teaching English class or something. I don't remember. It was from when I used to go to this Catholic school. But when I was there, we were reading this, and the way it was written, at least for that little magazine thing, they wrote it as if it was like a play, and it's like the straight up just the entire story, but it's like set in a way where it's like you can turn it into a play, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I was actually the narrator slash butler, the main role, other than the old man or the cops. Uh, Spoiling a little, but hey, it's an old story. But I was the narrator, and it was great. It was fun. It was awesome. I think I did pretty good. So I'm gonna see if I could channel that in a way. So let's begin. I hope everyone's nice and snug. Let's open my little soda. Hope everyone's nice and snug. You got the lights off. You're all comfortable. Maybe got a little bit of tea, I actually wish I made some tea, but I didn't make tea. I instead grabbed a soda because I have a very crippling soda addiction. But that's not the point. Just hope you got some tea or something. Get something nice to drink, a little snack maybe. Huh? You're all cuddled up under a blanket, ready for a nice little story time. Or stories time. So let's begin. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True. Nervous? Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me an insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. Oh, you should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust my head in. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was all well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Nuh-uh, you're the cutie, not me. How dare you? And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been very profound, old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think there I was, opening the door little by little, and not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at that idea. And perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness. For the shutters were closed fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang out in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh, no! It was the slow, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he'd been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. When he had turned in the bed, his fears had been ever growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." Or, "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. Oh, you cannot imagine how stealthily, until at the length of a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open! Wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. Oh, But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely on the damned spot! And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say, there come to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, just as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased to my fury, as the beating of the drums stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of the old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked, "Oh!" Once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you'll think so no longer, when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out. No stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these loose labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded an hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale, and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat, and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued, and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling. But it continued, and gained definitiveness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently, and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key, with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God! What could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung upon the chair, which had I been sitting, and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose over all, and continually increased. It grew louder, and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God! No, they heard! They suspected! They knew! They were making a mockery of my horror! This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt I must scream or die. And again, and now again, and hark! Louder! Villains! I shrieked. Disassemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart! Edgar Allan Poe, January 1843. The Telltale Heart. So, what you guys think? Huh? Great story, right? Great story, huh? Gives me chills every time. Every time. I'm telling you, it gives me I'm sweating because I'm so terrified. Oh, I love that story. One of my favorites. I love how basically the end, the butler kind of just relents. He kind of just breaks down, and it's like, oh my God, I did it. Just stop the beating. he is crazy. He's an unreliable narrator, and that's why I love this story so much. It is one of my favorites. Uh, I know a few of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe's are pretty like mainstream though, because my two favorite stories from him is the Telltale Heart and the Raven, and I know like those two are his most well known stories, but it's like they're my favorites personally. I genuinely think they're one of the better kind of like stories. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I always thought that those were such compelling stories. Yeah. It- yeah. So now we're gonna switch to my other favorite, the Raven. Has anyone heard of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven? Anyone? Students? Anyone? Anyone? Students? Anyone? Anyone? Students? I'm just kidding. Um, the Raven is one of my favorite stories, though, and we will read that one, and it's gonna be great. It's a good one. It's a good one. So, let me take a little drink because my throat, my throat hurts a little after that last yell, and I feel bad for my neighbors. It's just whenever I read that story, I really, like get into it. I remember either reading or listening to the Telltale Heart in high school, I believe. But you, sir, a different feel. Ah, you, you make me blush, my boy. You're making me blush. Oh, mm. I mean, thank you. I genuinely, I'm appreciative of that. Thank you very much. You didn't have to say that. All right. So we're gonna go with the Raven. I believe the Raven is a little bit longer. I could be wrong, but we're gonna go with the Raven now. And then after that, we're gonna switch to a couple of Aesop's fables. And then after that, I'll read either one, two, or maybe a couple of H.P. Lovecraft stuff. I have the two books right here. Anyways, so let us go to Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished tomorrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book's crease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, it is, and nothing more." Presenting my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I open wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word that was spoken was whispered word. Lenore. This I whispered, and echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what there it is. And this mystery explored, let my heart be still a moment and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with a mien of lord or lady perched upon my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, Other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, to the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of the bird, and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking Nevermore. Yes, that is what I'm reading, Stella. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease, reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, that lamp light gloated over, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating over. She shall pass, she shall press, ah, nevermore. Then methought The air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch! I cried. Thy God have lent thee by these angels, he have sent thee respite, respite, nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempest sent, whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in the Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden if, within the distant Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden from whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word of our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest, and in the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul have spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak out my heart, and take thy form from of my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's tat is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Edgar Allan Poe, published January 29th, 1845. That was The Raven. What'd you guys think of that story? Did you like The Raven? I liked it. It's a good one. It's a good one. Cinema. Absolute cinema. Ooh. That was a good one. I genuinely love that story. Love them both. I agree, Momiko. Also, hi, Momiko. Hi. I genuinely love Edgar Allan Poe. A lot of his work is just amazing. Same here, Stella. I love me some Edgar Allan Poe. All right. Now, hello. I love you, Momiko. But now we shall read a couple of Aesop's fables. Before we start reading, may I ask, how is everyone doing at this point in time? Is everyone doing good? Yay! I hope everyone is doing fine. Thank you. I will indeed hydrate. Give me 1 second. Just gotta make sure it's on the correct page. Yeah, perfect. Chimlin waiting for foods. Let me drink real quick. A big stretch. I would say everyone should have a nice big stretch. Very nice. What are you gonna eat, Stella? Because I know after the stream, I might have some hashwi, or I might make a homemade pizza, or I don't know. I'm doing great. Thank you, Mamiko. Thank you for asking. I'm doing wonderful, and I'm glad you're doing well. Oh, oh my nose. But yes, I'm doing pretty good. I am a little hungry though, but I could always eat after stream, because right now I feel like reading, and I want to share books and stories that I like with you guys. The next time I do a reading stream, I might read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Maybe we could start doing that, and then every couple reading streams we'll continue the story. Or I could read from. I do have quite a lot of books. I'll be honest. Ooh, I could read the Book of Yokai. It's a great book. I could also read some Slavic folk tales, which I believe I have the Slavic folk tales book here. I could actually also read some of those, so I will read some of those. Give me 1 second. Ooh, Mama made Portuguese sauce shrimp. Portuguese. Oh, Mamiko, you're gonna make me hungry. Oh, I want some of that. I want some. Sounds delicious. Where is that book? I had it here somewhere. Where did I put it? Here we go. I found you. I am back. I found it. Slavonic fairy tales. That would be after the Aesop's Fables. I hope everyone is ready. Is everyone comfy? I hope. I had to also put on some glasses for my eyes, because my eyes are a little bit strained right now. Yay! Oh, trust me, I'd clean that plate, because that sounds delicious. Portuguese sauce shrimp and soup, chicken soup. Oh, I would devour that food, I'm telling you. All right. So, let us begin with the first fable from Aesop Fables. This is one that I'm pretty sure everyone knows. Yes? It is The Tortoise and the Hare. How many here actually know that one? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a well-known one, correct? The thing with a lot of Aesop's fables is a lot of them have to do with animals or certain things. It's very interesting. It's all good stuff. So let us begin with The Tortoise and the Hare. Shall we? They're all short, so it's going to be pretty easy to get through a bunch of these. So let's begin. The hare one day laughed at the tortoise for his short feet, slowness, and awkwardness. "Though you may be swift as the wind," replied the tortoise good naturally, "I can beat you in a race." The hare looked on the challenge as a great joke, but consented to a trial of speed, and the fox was selected to act as umpire and hold the stakes. The rivals started, and the hare, of course, soon left the tortoise far behind. Having reached midway to the goal, he began to play about, nibbled the young herbage, and amused herself in many ways. The day being warm, she even thought she would take a little nap in a shady spot, for she thought that if the tortoise should pass her while she slept, she could easily overtake him again before he reached the end. The tortoise, meanwhile, plodded on, unwavering and unresting, straight towards the goal. The hare, having overslept herself, started up from her nap, and was surprised to find that the tortoise was nowhere in sight. Off she went at full speed, but on reaching the winning post, found that the tortoise was already there, waiting for her arrival. Slow and steady wins the race. Classic, right? That's a classic, yeah. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows, slow and steady wins the race. One of my favorite things about each Aesop fable is that they all have a lesson or moral or something that is being said, and that's what the fable's for. The next one is the fox and the stork. This one I actually don't know. I have never been told this one before, but hey, you know, I love reading, so it's good for me. So let's continue with the fox and the stork. A fox one day invited a stork to dine with him, and, wishing to be amused at his expense, put the soup which he had for dinner in a large flat dish, so that while he himself could lap it up quite easily, the stork could only dip in the tips of his long bill. Some time after, the stork, bearing his treatment in mind, invited the fox to take dinner with him. He, in his turn, put some minced meat in a long and narrow-necked vessel, into which he could easily put his bill, while Master Fox was forced to be content with licking what ran down the sides of the vessel. The fox then remembered his old trick, and could not but admit that the stork had well paid him out. A joke is often returned with interest. So many spam bots, huh? Good thing I have SiriBot to help. So let's go over each thing. This one is a good one because it's basically saying, hey, don't fuck with people and people won't fuck with you. You know what I mean? It's basically saying, hey, you mess with someone, they're going to mess with you back. Remember that. Everything, actions have consequences. You don't want a joke played on you, so don't play a joke on someone. Pretty easy, right? The next one is the peacock's complaint. See, Mamako gets it. All right, the next one is the peacock's complaint. The peacock complained to Juno that while everyone laughed at his voice, an insignificant creature like the nightingale had a note that delighted all listeners. Juno, angry at the unreasonableness of her favorite bird, scolded him in the following terms. "Envious bird that you are! I am sure you have no cause to complain. On your neck shine all the colors of the rainbow, and your extended tail gleams like a mass of gems. No living being has every good thing to its own share. The falcon is endowed with swiftness, the eagle strength, the parrot speech, the raven the gift of augury, and the nightingale a melodious note, while you have both size and beauty. Cease then to complain, or the gifts you have shall be taken away." See, this should be taught in school as well as comments. Agreed. See, Mamako gets it. And the end of this, anyways, where was I? Oh, or the gifts you have shall be taken away. Contentment should be the source of every joy. This one, again, I say is pretty simple to understand. The peacock complains. The peacock's a complainer, right? They're complaining about having it good. They're complaining that someone has something that they don't. But it's like, you have everything, man. You're big, you're colorful, you're beautiful. Why should you be jealous? Why are you complaining? You should be content with what you have. It's basically saying, stop being a spoiled brat. Exactly, lol. Karen. Exactly. It's a Karen. It's a Karen. The peacock was a Karen, and Juno was the manager. But it's kind of like that, you know. It's like, hey, why are you bitching? Stop bitching. You got it good. You know, you got it good. What's with the complaining? It's pretty much being like, hey, come on, come on, you know. Anyways, the next is the two crabs. This one I know. This one I know. I remember this one. My dear, called out an old crab to her daughter one day, why do you sidle along in that awkward manner? Why don't you go forward like other people? Well, mother, answered the young crab, it seems to me that I go exactly like you do. Go first and show me how, and I will gladly follow. Example is better than percept. That one's a very short one, but it is obvious. You know, it's like, hey, you learn and lead by example. If you want others to be like you, show them an example. If you want someone to do a task for simple, you know, like a simple task, you know, it's like, hey, how come you're not doing this task? You know, you're not doing it correctly. Lead them, show them an example. All right. The next one, we are going to go to, yeah, we're going to do this next one, and then I'll read a couple Slavic fairy tales, and then we'll end off with H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. So let's do this last fable from Aesop. The Fox Without a Tail. A fox was once caught in a trap by his tail, and in order to get away was forced to leave it behind. Knowing that without a tail he would be a laughingstock for all his fellows, he resolved to try to induce them to part with theirs. So at the next assembly of foxes he made a speech on the unprofitableness of tails in general, and the inconvenience of a fox's tail in particular, adding that he had never felt so easy as since he had given up his own. When he sat down, a sly old fellow rose, and waving his long brush with a graceful air, said, with a sneer, that if, like the last speaker, he had lost his tail, nothing further would have been needed to convince him, but till such an accident should happen, he should certainly vote in favor of tails. Guard against those who would wish you to be reduced to their own level. Can you guess what that's about? Hmm? Hmm? Can you? Pretty much. Hey, watch out for those who want to put you down to their level. You know, if someone's being a dick, don't let them put you down into their level. Don't be a dick back. If someone's like, hey, you should listen to my advice, and they're like someone who you shouldn't be listening to any advice from, maybe don't listen to their advice, you know? That goes for certain people in the country. I think that one's the most relevant of all of these, let's be honest. That one's obviously the most relevant. Without naming names. Without naming anything. Okay. So, what I have here now. Don't be a stepping stool. Exactly. Don't be a stepping stool. Anyways, now what I have here is a book of Slavonic fairy tales. You know, fairy tales from Russia, Poland, all these, you know, Bohemia, Serbian. It's just a collection of these. And we shall start. The first one is Carried Away by the Wind from the Polish. This is one from the Polish. So let's start. A certain magician, being angry with a young peasant, came to the hut where he lived and stuck a new and sharp knife under the threshold. Repeating an incantation as he did so, accompanied by this wish: "May this peasant be seized and carried away by the wind into the air, there to remain for 7 whole years." The peasant went into the fields to make hay, when all of a sudden a great wind arose. It scattered the hay over the field and seized the peasant himself. In vain he struggled. In vain he caught hold with his strong arms of hedge or branch of tree. The invisible power lifted him up and carried him away. Borne as if on the wings of the wind, among the clouds he flew like a wild pigeon. The sun began already to disappear in the west, and the hungry peasant could see the smoke ascending from the cottages in his village, where supper was cooking. At one time he could almost touch the chimney pots with his feet, and he screamed aloud for help. But he screamed and wept in vain. No one heard his cries or saw his bitter tears. He was thus carried about in the air for nearly 3 months, and by that time, from hunger and thirst, had become dried up like a piece of wood. He traveled over a large part of the world, but the wind carried him chiefly over the village where he had lived. With tears in his eyes, he would look on the hut where dwelt his betrothed. He would see her coming out with dinner for someone of the family. He would spread his thin, cold arms towards her and call her by name. His voice would die in his throat, while the girl would not even look up. Away and away the peasant was borne by the wind. Presently he saw the cruel magician standing before his own house. The magician looked up and shouted to him, "Ha! I have not done with you yet, and you shall be thus carried by the wind over your own village for 7 long years. You shall suffer constantly, and wish you were dead, but you shall not be able to die." "Oh, my little father, my master, forgive me if I have offended you," cried the poor fellow from above. "Look at me, see my mouth is as dry as a chirp. Look at my face and hands, the flesh is gone from them, and the bones only are left. Have mercy upon me." The magician whispered a few words, and the peasant stopped in his circular motion and remained still in the air. "It is all very well to ask my pardon, but what will you promise to give me if I let you down?" "All that you ask for," cried the poor peasant, as he put his hands together as in supplication and knelt down in the air. "Will you give me your sweetheart?" demanded the magician. "I want her for my wife. If you will promise to give her to me, I will let you come down once more to the earth." The peasant was silent for a moment. Thought he to himself, "When I am once more on the ground, I'll see what can be done." He therefore called out to the magician, "O master, you ask a great sacrifice from me, but if it cannot be otherwise, let it be as you will." Hereupon the magician blew upon him, and he came down to the ground. Oh, how happy he was when he felt that he could walk, and that the wind had no more power over him. He hastened home. Before the door he met his betrothed. At the sight of her long-lost lover, over whose fate she had often wept, the astonished girl cried out with surprise. The peasant pushed her gently aside and went into the house. There he saw the farmer who employed him, and said to him, with tears in his eyes, "I cannot serve you any longer, nor can I marry your daughter. I love her as dearly as my sight, but she can never be mine." The countryman looked at him in wonder, and seeing how sorrowful his thin, pale face, formerly so fat and rosy, he asked the reason why he refused to marry his daughter. The peasant told him all, his journey in the air, and the promise he had made to the magician. The farmer, having heard him out, bade the poor fellow be of good cheer. He then took a purse full of money and went to a witch for advice. When he returned in the evening, he was smiling and happy, and said to the peasant, "Go tomorrow before daylight to the witch, and all will be right." The peasant, weary as he was, went to bed and soon fell fast asleep. He got up, however, before daylight and went to the witch. He found her crouching before a fire burning herbs. The witch told him to stand quietly by. The morning was calm and beautiful, but suddenly a strong wind arose and made the hut tremble. Then the witch took the peasant into the yard and told him to look up. He raised his eyes and saw the wicked magician with nothing on but his nightshirt, whirling round and round in the air. "There is your enemy," said the witch. "He will hurt you no more. If you wish him to see your wedding, do as I will tell you. For the rest, he will suffer the same punishment as he designed for you." The delighted peasant ran back home. In months' time he was married. When the guests were dancing at his wedding, the peasant went into the yard, looked up, and saw above the hut at the magician spinning round and round in the air. He took a new knife, and aiming at the magician, threw it with all his might. The magician fell down, and then it was seen that he was nailed by the foot to the ground. Thus he was obliged to stand by the window, a miserable witness of the happiness of the peasant and his friends. On the following morning the magician had disappeared from before the hut. Some people said they saw him flying through the air over a large lake some miles off. Before and behind him were large flocks of crows, which, by their croaking, told of his continued flight through space. That was Carried Away by the Wind from Poland. That was a Polish fairy tale. What did you all think of that? That's a good one, in my opinion. I like that one. I've read it before. I like how the peasant's able to get his revenge. Being like, "Hey, you motherfucker, you, oh, I got you. Try to make me go flying around aimlessly without food or water." I yeah. It's a good one. I like that one. The next one is going to be from the Serbian. It is called "Why is the Sole of a Man's Foot Uneven?" It's a fairy tale, literally kind of describing what they thought was the reason why the sole of a man's foot is uneven. It's very interesting. I've read it also. This one has a little bit of religious stuff, though. So if you don't mind about hearing about angels in heaven. So we will... I'm not sure. Okay. We're going to read this one, and then I will run a 2-minute ad after this one. So you can all take like a quick little break, bathroom break, get like a couple snacks if you need some. So let's begin with this, and then we'll take a break. Why is the sole of a man's foot uneven? When the evil angels rebelled against heaven and escaped to the earth, they took the sun with them. Their prince, the archfiend, stuck it on a lance and carried it on his shoulder. When, however, the earth complained to heaven that it would be quite burnt up by the sun, an archangel was sent down to see how he could take the sun away from the archfiend. The archangel descended to the earth and made friends with the prince of rebels, who, however, at once divined the object of the visit, and stood accordingly on his guard. One day, as they walked together on the earth, they came to the sea, and agreed to bathe in it. The archfiend stuck the lance with the sun on top of it into the ground. After a little while, the archangel said, "Let us dive and see who will go down the deepest." Good. Do you begin?" said the archfiend. Oh, it was while the archangel said. Oh, the archfiend. My bad. But anyways, said the archfiend, "Good. Do you begin?" The archangel dived and brought up some sand between his teeth from the bottom of the sea. It was now the other's turn to dive, but the archfiend was afraid that during his absence the archangel might fly away with the sun. Suddenly, a thought struck him. He spat upon the ground, and a magpie arose out of it. The bird was to keep watch over the sun, while the archfiend also made his plunge, and brought up some sand from the bottom of the sea between his teeth. As soon as the fiend had dived, the archangel made the sign of the cross with his hand, and the sea was immediately covered with ice 9 ells thick. Then he seized the sun and flew away with it to heaven. The magpie screamed with all her might. The archfiend, hearing her voice, guessed at once what had happened, and hastened back. When he came up, however, he found he could not make his way through, as the sea was frozen over. He therefore dived again to the bottom, brought up a larger stone, broke the ice with it, and then rushed after the archangel. The archangel fled through the air with the utmost speed, followed by the fiend. Just as the angel had one foot in heaven, the fiend overtook him, and with his claws, as he tried to stop him, tore off a large piece of his flesh from the sole of the other foot. The archangel, severely wounded, appeared with the sun in heaven, and weeping said, "What shall I do, so mutilated as I am?" And it was said to him, "Cease from thy tears, and despair not. It shall happen that henceforth man, also like you, shall have a hollow in the sole of his foot." As it was said, so it came to pass. From that day there appeared a small hollow in the sole of a man's foot, and thus it remained unto this day. That's a good one. That one was neat. Huh? What did y'all think of that one? I think that's a neat way to explain why we have like an arch with our feet, you know? I think that's an interesting way, huh? All right. Let us have... I'm going to run the 2-minute ad. Take a nice little break if you need a break. I'm going to get a snack. I'm also going to use the bathroom. I suggest everyone else to also use the bathroom. Maybe get a little snack. Yeah? All right. And then we will return with maybe another Slavonic fairy tale or H.P. Lovecraft. I'm thinking H.P. Lovecraft, you know? I'm thinking a good couple H.P. Lovecraft stories, because H.P. Lovecraft tends to be much longer because of the way he writes. But what's story though? I could do The Alchemist. Let me see actually. We could do The Beast in the Cave first, or we could do The Alchemist first. I'm thinking let's do Beast in the Cave first. Then we'll do The Alchemist. We'll just go one by one, because these are all... Because I have a book of all his fiction, and we'll just go by released order of his fiction, I guess. We'll start with Beast in the Cave, and maybe go up to Dagon, or The Reminiscence of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Or we can... I think we can maybe go up to Beyond the Wall of Sleep. Maybe. We'll see. So let's just, for now, have a good little break. Let me just make sure I get to the story. There it is, The Beast in the Cave. While I read these, I will each, usually like, some of the stories have like a little preface about the context of the story and about when he wrote them. So I will also read that. So yes. All right. I am going to use the bathroom real quick, take a little big bathroom break, as well as maybe get a little snack. So I hope everyone has a good little break. Go use the bathroom, get some water, something to drink, something to eat, and we will be back soon. In about once the ad starts in 5 seconds, it will be a 2-minute ad. All right, I'm gonna get some food and also use the bathroom. I have returned, and I have gotten myself an Uncrustable peanut butter and honey spread sandwich. Mmm, peanut butter and honey. Delicious. I'm gonna have a little bite right now. Gonna mute my mic while I eat this because I don't want y'all to hear me eating. That's a good sandwich. I mean, it's just a little Uncrustable. And that is a sandwich. An Uncrustable is a sandwich. It's peanut butter and honey, and I love that. Yummy, yummy, yummy in my tummy. All right. How's everyone doing? How's everyone doing right now? Good? Use the bathroom? Ready for more reading? For more spooky stories? Yeah. Let me take one more bite. God, that's good. Mm-mm-mm. I'm definitely going to cook dinner after this. I don't know what to cook, though. Any suggestions? I'm just going to heat up the hashui or make a homemade pizza. Or I could even do some pasta. Because I think we have some pasta. But do we have, I don't think I have the tomato sauce. Not the tomato sauce, but, the pasta sauce. I mean, I could always make my own. I've done it before. It was fun. But it was more of like a white sauce than tomatoes, you know. It was nice and creamy, though. Oh, it was delicious. All right. Shall we begin? Yes? Yes? Okay. Let us begin. We will be reading The Beast in the Cave by H.P. Lovecraft. Here's a little preface for this. Lovecraft wrote the first draft of this story sometime before the spring of 1904 and completed the final draft on April 21st, 1905. He had no first-hand experience of caves, so he spent several days at the Providence Public Library boning up on the story's locale, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. For the work of someone not yet 15 years old, he wasn't even 15 years old yet, the tale is surprisingly effective. In later years, however, Lovecraft would tone down some of the typographical eccentricities found toward the end of the narrative. On the manuscript, he has indicated that it forms part of the volume Tales of Terror, period, modern. It was first published in The Vagrant, June of 1918. So when he first wrote this story, at least the first draft, he wasn't even 15 years old yet. He was 14. He was 14 years old writing his first fictional work. And we're about to read it. The man may have been a racist, but damn was he a good author. He was a good writer. Granted, he wasn't racist out of hate. It was literally fear. Not excusing it. Just that man had fear like crazy. That man was afraid of everything. He was afraid of air conditioning. H.P. Lovecraft was afraid of air conditioning. That's crazy. But hey, he has had a incredibly terrible life, really, in terms of his family. Because if I remember, both his mother and father were put into Arkham Asylum, like the real Arkham, like the real asylum, not like the fictional version. I mean, they were put into a straight up asylum, which I think is crazy. I'd say that's awful. Because imagine that, Anyways, so let's begin. Yes, yeah. All right. Afraid of AC is crazy, right? Yeah. All right, so let's continue. So let's begin. The Beast in the Cave. The horrible conclusion which had been gradually obtruding itself upon my confused and reluctant mind was now an awful certainty. I was lost. Completely, hopelessly lost in the vast and labyrinthine recesses of the Mammoth Cave. Turn as I might, in no direction could my straining vision seize on any object capable of serving as a guidepost to set me on the outward path, that nevermore should I behold the blessed light of day, or scan the pleasant hills and dales of the beautiful world outside, My reason could no longer entertain the slightest unbelief. Hope had departed, yet indoctrinated as I by a life of philosophical study, I derived no small measure of satisfaction from my unimpassioned demeanor. For although I had frequently read of the wild frenzies into which were thrown in the victims of similar situations, I experienced none of these, but stood quiet as soon as I clearly realized the loss of my bearings. Nor did the thought that I had probably wandered beyond the utmost limits of an ordinary search cause me to abandon my composure even for a moment. If I must die, I reflected, then was this terrible yet majestic cavern as welcome as sepulchre as that which any churchyard might afford, a conception which carried with it more of tranquillity than of despair. Starving would prove my ultimate fate. Of this I was certain. Some I knew had gone mad under circumstances such as these, but I felt that this end would not be mine. My disaster was the result of no fault save my own, since unbeknown to the guide I had separated myself from the regular party of sightseers, and wandering for over an hour in forbidden avenues of the cave, had found myself unable to retrace the devious windings which I had pursued since forsaking my companions. Already my torch had begun to expire. Soon I would be enveloped by the total and almost palpable blackness of the bowels of the earth. As I stood in the waning, unsteady light, I idly wandered over the exact circumstances of my coming end. I remembered the accounts which I had heard of the colony of consumptives who, taking their residence in this gigantic grotto to find health from the apparently salubrious air of the underground world with its steady uniform temperature, pure air, and peaceful quiet, had found instead death in strange and ghastly form. I had seen the sad remains of their ill-made cottages as I passed them by with the party, and had wondered what unnatural influence a long sojourn in this immense and silent cavern would exert upon one as healthy and as vigorous as I. Now I grimly told myself my opportunity for settling this point had arrived, provided that want of food should not bring me too speedy a departure from this life. As the last fitful rays of my torch faded into obscurity, I resolved to leave no stone unturned, no possible means of escape neglected. So summoning all the powers possessed by my lungs, I set up a series of loud shoutings in the vain hope of attracting the attention of the guide by my clamor. Yet as I called, I believed in my heart that my cries were to no purpose, and that my voice, magnified and reflected by the numberless ramparts of the black maze about me, fell upon no ears save my own. All at once, however, my attention was fixed with a start as I fancied that I heard the sound of soft approaching steps on the rocky floor of the cavern. Was my deliverance about to be accomplished so soon? Had then all my horrible apprehensions been for naught? And was the guide, having marked my unwarranted absence from the party, following my course and seeking me out in this limestone labyrinth? Whilst these joyful queries arose in my brain, I was on the point of renewing my cries, in order that my discovery might come the sooner, when in an instant my delight was turned to horror as I listened, for my ever acute ear, now sharpened in even greater degree by the complete silence of the cave, bore to my benumbed understanding the unexpected and dreadful knowledge that these footfalls were not like those of any mortal man. In the unearthly stillness of this subterranean region, the tread of the booted guide would have sounded like a series of sharp and incisive blows. These impacts were soft and stealthy, as of the padded paws of some feline. Besides, at times when I listened carefully, I seemed to trace the falls of 4 instead of 2 feet. I was now convinced that I had by my cries aroused and attracted some wild beast, perhaps a mountain lion which had accidentally strayed within the cave. Perhaps I considered the Almighty had chosen for me a swifter and merciful death than that of hunger. Yet the instinct of self-preservation, never wholly dormant, was stirred in my breast, and though escape from the oncoming peril might but spare me for a sterner and more lingered end, I determined nevertheless to part with my life at as high a price as I could command. Strange as it may seem, my mind conceived of no intent on the part of the visitor, save that of hostility. Accordingly, I became very quiet, in the hope that the unknown beast would, in the absence of a guiding sound, lose its direction, as had I, and thus pass by me. But this hope was not destined for realization, for the strange footfall steadily advanced. The animal, evidently having obtained my scent, which in an atmosphere so absolutely free from all distracting influences as is that of the cave, could doubtless be followed at great distance. Seeing therefore I must be armed for defense against an uncanny and unseen attack in the dark, I grouped about me the largest of the fragments of rock which were strewn upon all parts of the floor of the cavern in the vicinity, and grasping one in each hand for immediate use, awaited with resignation in the inevitable result. Meanwhile the hideous pattering of the paws drew near. Certainly the conduct of the creature was exceedingly strange. Most of the time the tread seemed to be that of a quadruped, walking with a singular lack of unison betwixt hind and 4 feet. Yet at brief and infrequent intervals, I fancied that but 2 feet were engaged in the process of locomotion. I wondered what species of animal was to confront me. It must, I thought, be some unfortunate beast who had paid for its curiosity to investigate one of the entrances of the fearful grotto, with a lifelong confinement in its interminable recesses. It doubtless obtained as food the eyeless fish, bats, and rats of the cave, as well as some of the ordinary fish that are wafted in at every freshet of Green River, which communicates in some occult manner with the waters of the cave. I occupied my terrible vigil with grotesque conjectures of what alterations cave life might have wrought in the physical structure of the beast, remembering the awful appearances ascribed by local tradition to the consumptives who had died after long residence in the cave. Then I remembered with a start that, even should I succeed in killing my antagonist, I should never behold its form, as my torch had long since been extinct, and I was entirely unprovided with matches. The tension on my brain now became frightful. My disordered fancy conjured up hideous and fearsome shapes from the sinister darkness that surrounded me, and that actually seemed to press upon my body. Nearer, nearer, the dreadful footfalls approached. It seemed that I must give vent to a piercing scream, yet I had been sufficiently irresolute to attempt such a thing. My voice could scarce have responded. I was petrified, rooted to the spot. I doubted if my right arm would allow me to hurl its missile at the oncoming thing. When the crucial moment should arrive, now the steady pat, pat of the steps was close at hand. Now, very close. I could now hear the labored breathing of the animal, and terror struck as I was, I realized that it must have come from a considerable distance and was correspondingly fatigued. Suddenly the spell broke. My right hand guided my ever trustworthy sense of hearing, threw with full force the sharp angled bit of limestone which it contained, toward the point in the darkness from which it emanated the breathing and pattering. And wonderful to relate, it nearly reached its goal, for I heard the thing jump, landing at a distance away where it seemed to pause. Having readjusted my aim, I discharged my second missile, this time most effectively. Oh, my nose, it just... Most effectively, for, with a flood of joy, I listened as the creature fell in what sounded like a complete collapse, and evidently remained prone and unmoving, almost overpowered by the great relief which rushed over me. I reeled back against the wall. The breathing continued, in heavy gasping inhalations and expirations, whence I realized that I had no more than wounded the creature. And now all desire to examine the thing ceased. At last something allied to groundless, superstitious fear had entered my brain, and I did not approach the body, nor did I continue to cast stones at it in order to complete the extinction of its life. Instead, I ran full speed in what was, as nearly as I could estimate in my frenzied condition, the direction from which I had come. Suddenly I heard a sound, or rather a regular succession of sounds. In another instant they had dissolved themselves into a series of sharp metallic clicks. This time there was no doubt. It was the guide. And then I shouted, yelled, screamed, even shrieked with joy as I beheld in the vaulted arches above the faint and glimmering effulgence, which I knew to be the reflected light of an approaching torch. I ran to meet the flare, and before I could completely understand what had occurred, was lying upon the ground at the feet of the guide, embracing his boots and gibbering, despite my boasted reserve, in a most meaningless and idiotic manner, pouring out my terrible story, and at the same time overwhelming my auditor with protestations of gratitude. At length I awoke to something like my normal consciousness. The guide had noted my absence upon the arrival of the party at the entrance of the cave, and had, from his own intuitive sense of direction, proceeded to make through a canvas of the by-passages just ahead of where he had last spoken to me, locating my whereabouts after a quest of about 4 hours. By the time he had related this to me, I, emboldened by his torch and his company, began to reflect upon the strange beast which I had wounded but a short distance back in the darkness, and suggested that we ascertain, by the rushlight's aid, what manner of creature was my victim. Accordingly, I retraced my steps, this time with courage born of companionship, to the scene of my terrible experience. Soon we descried a white object on the floor, an object whiter even than the gleaming limestone itself. Cautiously advancing, we gave vent to a simultaneous ejaculation of wonderment. For of all the unnatural monsters either of us had in our lifetimes beheld, this was in surpassing degree the strangest. It appeared to be an anthropoid ape of large proportions, escaped, perhaps, from some itinerant menagerie. Its hair was snow white, a thing no doubt due to the bleaching action of a long existence within the inky confines of the cave, but it was also surprisingly thin, being indeed largely absent save on the head, where it was of such length and abundance that it fell over the shoulders in considerable profusion. The face was turned away from us, as the creature lay almost directly upon it. The inclination of the limbs was very singular, explaining, however, the alternation in their use of which I had before noted, whereby the beast used sometimes all four, and on other occasions but two, for its progress. From the tips of the fingers or toes, long nail-like claws extended. The hands or feet were not prehensile, a fact that I ascribed to that long residence in the cave, which, as I before mentioned, seemed evident from the all-pervading and almost unearthly whiteness so characteristic of the whole anatomy. No tail seemed to be present. The respiration had now grown very feeble, and the guide had drawn his pistol with the evident intent of dispatching the creature, when a sudden sound emitted by the latter caused the weapon to fall unused. The sound was of a nature difficult to describe. It was not like the normal note of any known species of simian, and I wondered if this unnatural quality were not the result of long continued and complete silence, broken by the sensations produced by the advent of the light, a thing which the beast could not have seen since its first entrance into the cave. The sound, which I might feebly attempt to classify as a deep-toned chattering, was faintly continued. All at once a fleeting spasm of energy seemed to pass throughout the frame of the beast. The paws went through a convulsive motion, and the limbs contracted. With a jerk, the white body rolled over so that its face was turned in our direction. For a moment, I was so struck with horror at the eyes thus revealed that I noted nothing else. They were black, those eyes deep, jetty black, in hideous contrast to the snow-white hair and flesh, like those of other cave denizens, and they were completely sunken in their orbits, and were entirely destitute of iris. As I looked more closely, I saw that they were set in a face less prognathous than that of the average ape, and infinitely more hairy. The nose was quite distinct. As we gazed upon the uncanny sight presented to our vision, the thick lips opened, and several sounds issued from them, after which the thing relaxed in death. The guide clutched my coat sleeve and trembled so violently that the light shook fitfully, casting weird moving shadows on the walls about us. I made no motion, but stood rigidly still, my horrified eyes fixed upon the floor ahead. Then fear left, and wonder, awe, compassion, and reverence succeeded in its place, for the sounds uttered by the stricken figure that lay stretched out on the limestone had told us in awesome truth. The creature I had killed, the strange beast of the unfathomed cave, was, or had one time been, a man. That was The Beast in the Cave. That's one of my favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories because it's so simple. It's such a simple story of some guy getting lost in a cave because, he's being dumb and, not staying with the party, not staying with the guide. So, he gets lost in a cave. Sorry. Had to finish that up. Sandwich. Delicious. Now that I think about it, what do you think inspired Cthulhu? If I remember, what inspired Cthulhu was his nightmares. Was some of his nightmares. I could be wrong though, but I'm pretty sure that's what inspired Cthulhu. Also, you spelled it wrong, but it's all good here. I ain't gonna judge you. It is a hard spelling. He kind of did find a skinwalker in a way, or a Wendigo, I guess you could say, from like Until Dawn. But yeah, no, he just finds like he's being stalked by something in this cave because he got lost in it and had no light, no flashlight, no torch, no nothing, because he was stupid and left his group. And that's something we should all remember. Don't be stupid when cave exploring. It's like, why are you... What the hell, man? I'm a streamer, not an English major. I know, I'm just kidding, buddy. I'm just messing with you. But yeah, it's like, that story is literally just like, hey, don't be fucking stupid. Don't be like that guy. But yeah, I think it's such a good, like, what's the word? Twist. That the animal, the beast that was in the cave, that was following him, stalking him, was a man. at one point before they became this creature. There were probably another person like him who got lost in the cave and just lived there for who knows how many years. And because they were in the cave for so long, their whole thing altered, you know? It's kind of like I don't know, has anyone here ever seen the movie oh god, The Descent? It's kind of like that, where in the Descent, there's a bunch of these cave divers and stuff. They go into this cave, and what they don't know is that this cave is like home to like kind of like mutants in a way. Like I think they're like vampire-ish mutants or something. Like they're originally people who somehow got into the cave or something, and over years and years and years of inbreeding and stuff, they became like monsters. That was such a good movie. I gotta watch that movie again. Okay, so this next one is pretty long, and I'll be honest, I am starving. That peanut butter sandwich with honey didn't do it. I mean, it did it. It did make me did help a little, but I need to eat some actual food. And thinking about Mamako's food and her cooking, because she mentioned it earlier, made me more hungry. So I think I might actually cook something. But before we do, I'll just say this. Next time we do a reading stream, we will read this next H.P. Lovecraft story, and then we will begin Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, maybe, or I'll put in the Discord. For those who are part of the Discord, in the Discord, I'll put like a poll for what you want me to read for the next reading stream. And then anytime we have a reading stream, we'll continue that book or story, depending on how long it was, or how long it is or will be. Um, yeah. One thing I would never read on stream would be anything from Dostoevsky. Not because I don't like Dostoevsky. I actually really do like Dostoevsky. I think Dostoevsky is a great author. I I've been loving Crime and Punishment. I just started reading Crime and Punishment again. I don't remember much from Crime and Punishment. I just started reading it again though, so I could remember it better. And also because the first time I ever had to read Dostoevsky was in high school for an essay, I believe. I don't know why the teacher wanted us to read Dostoevsky, but I guess he wanted us to read Dostoevsky. Um, yeah, he wanted us to read like I believe, Crime and Punishment, and then I think he had us also read the brothers Karamazov, which is which is like his magnum opus, by the way. The brothers Karamazov is his magnum opus. That's like the best one. But the thing with Dostoevsky, his books are kind of hard to read because it's because they were originally written in Russian, in full like Cyrillic and everything, and it makes more sense in the original language. But when translated into English, there's a lot of stuff that like goes over that doesn't go well with the translation because it's two different languages, right? And sometimes it's like a bit iffy, you know, and it's hard to like do direct translations for some words because some words doesn't have a direct translation, and the culture is different. For instance, Dostoevsky will call one character several different names. because Russians tend to use nicknames, or they'll call one person could have like several different nicknames or several names, because they'll be called different things by different people, right? Um, and that can get confusing at points, because you're like, wait, who the fuck is this? Oh no, that's the same character I've been reading this entire time. They're just calling him a different name, and it gets a little confusing at times. And also, a lot of stuff tends to be very Russian specific in terms of like ideals or set dressing and stuff, so it's like, unless you know some of that stuff, it might also go over your head, but at the same time, it could be still just fine. But either way, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment is one of my favorite books. I remember loving it, and I've read it a couple times. It's just my brain can never like remember specific stuff. I blame my ADHD, and also because like it's been such a long time since I've read it, and I'm just reading it again. I could also read the two Batman novels that I have. I was actually reading one of them, and I've gone a couple chapters in, but still, yeah, and it's pretty good. The two Batman novels I have is I forgot the first one's name. Um, but that one's supposed to be set after the first Tim Burton Batman movie, and before, I believe, the Batman Returns one. The one with Danny DeVito. Yeah, before that one. So it's like in between those two. And then I believe, yeah. And then the other one I have is the sequel to that novel that they released just recently, called Batman Revolution, which which I believe is supposed to take place after either the other Batman novel or after the Danny DeVito Penguin one. You know what I mean? Um, but that one I heard is pretty good. Revolution, I heard, is pretty good. And Revolution has the Riddler. And what's funny is, because this is in the Tim Burton Batman universe, uh, the Riddler was supposed to be Robin Williams at one point. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that, but a while back, Robin Williams was in the running to be the Riddler, and also the Joker. He wanted to be the Joker at first, but uh, he couldn't because of scheduling conflicts, if I remember. So instead, they got Jack Nicholson, and then uh, Tim Burton was like, "Hey, I know you wanted to be the Joker, but I will be doing another Batman movie at some point, and I think you would be a great Riddler." Or I think Robin Williams asked to be the Riddler then. I don't remember which one, but yeah. And then Tim Burton had planned for the third Tim Burton Batman film to have Robin Williams, our favorite genie, as the Riddler. And I think that's such a cool fact. But, as you know, that never happened because so many lame ass parents, so many fucking losers complained that the second Tim Burton Batman film was too scary, too too dark, too scary for children. And so they were forced to lighten it up and everything. So Tim Burton wasn't a part of the next one. So the one that came was like Batman Forever, which had Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and What's his name? The guy who plays Agent K in Men in Black. What's his name? Men in Black. Agent K. Was played by Tommy Lee Jones. And Tommy Lee Jones was Two-Face in that movie. In Batman Forever. So Batman Forever had Jim Carrey as the Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. I actually kind of like their interpretations of the characters. Like, I thought Tommy Lee Jones did a pretty interesting version of Two-Face. Not too serious, very goofy, but not like overly goofy. Like it's still pretty goofy, but like he really leans into the Two-Face thing where like you gotta see it to believe it. It's not a bad performance, and I kind of like it, and I like how it was unique. I kind of like Batman Forever. I'll be honest. That one for me is probably like a bit of a guilty pleasure Batman film for me, because I kind of like it. Especially because I thought Jim Carrey did a great job as the Riddler. I would have preferred Jim Carrey more as Joker, maybe, or even the trickster that Mark Hamill played at one point, for The Flash. But I thought he did a decent job as the Riddler. I did feel like the writers did not know what to do with the Riddler there, though. Because the Riddler kind of goes off the deep end at one point. Like, I know Riddler's supposed to be crazy, but, like, at one point he just kind of gets weird. I didn't like the final costume for him in the movie either. That final costume was kind of not that good. But whatever. And then we had, Batman and Robin, which had Mr. Freeze, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnie. The commando, Arnie. And Arnie was Mr. Freeze. And I'll be honest, that's probably like the only good thing from that movie was Arnie as Mr. Freeze. Because he did it so well, in my opinion. I loved his stupid fucking ice puns so much. all his like ice puns and freeze puns and all that is so funny throughout the entire movie. I can't help but love Arnie as Mr. Freeze. And I thought he still did pretty good acting when he had to do kind of more like some of the serious moments in the movie. And I thought that was still really good. He genuinely is like the best part of that entire movie. While the rest of the movie is just garbage. Cuz like Poison Ivy garbage. I'm sorry. I didn't like that interpretation of Poison Ivy. I mean that Poison Ivy wasn't like the worst version of Poison Ivy, but like I still thought like it could have been better. And I hated what they did with Bane. Oh my god, I hated what they did with Bane. Oh, making Bane like just a complete dunderhead, just stupid, was the worst decision for Bane. Because that's not who Bane is. Bane is actually extremely intelligent. Not only is he super jacked and super like strong, but he's extremely intelligent. Anyways, I'm rambling. I think I've seen it. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's implied that in The Descent, the main character escaping is just a hallucination. Mm-hmm. Anyways, before we leave off, I'm just gonna read this bit about the next story from H.P. Lovecraft. It's from The Alchemist. It's just a little preface, but I thought this is an interesting thing. The Alchemist was written in 1908, presumably prior to Lovecraft's abrupt withdrawal from high school in June. It betrays the influence of Poe and earlier writers of Gothic fiction in its use of a European setting. The anonymity of the protagonist's family, the Comte de and the idea of a familial curse that endures for centuries. Poe's influence can also be felt in the first person narrative's obsessive interest in his own psychological state. Lovecraft put the theme of alchemy to much better use in the short novel, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. It was first published in United Amateur, November 1916. I thought that was interesting little information. But that is all we have for tonight. I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Have good dreams. Do not dream about ravens quothing nevermore, or beasts in caves, or even a butler who isn't mad. No, far from it. He just doesn't like that eye. That one vulture eye.